try to reach the masses with television. That's why they called it broadcasting in the beginning. And now we live in a world where you have a one-on-one relationship with your screen and your device.
So it's really trying to find our players and pairing them up with our partners to try to find the right match. And that, like I said, it could be anything from a retail signing, it could be anything to LeBron James's endorsement deal with Sprite that we helped negotiate on their behalf.
And then ultimately, it literally became a halftime show in the middle of the Grammys to help tease this weekend's activities across the river.
When we can prove the value of the people that's consuming whatever it is that we're trying to offer, the value of that goes up, and we can charge more premium dollars, which we obviously want to drive a profit. So I wanted to pose again to the panel. When you're faced with different scenarios where clients either want something from you or you're trying to go out and trying to pitch an opportunity to get a sponsor to come on board, can you just talk a little bit about how that scenario plays out when and how you position, here's who we are, here's the value of what that offering is, and then here's the value of the audience you're going to reach just by being attached to this brand or this element. Can you, Michael, talk about that a little bit?
Sure. One of the things that, at least in my department, sells are our players and the brand attributes that each of them come with. So for us, one of our partners is Kia, and we can try to sell them on an NBA player as well to be a part of their campaigns, and they just kept saying no, it doesn't make sense. We don't want one singular player. We want the overall NBA brand and what you stand for. What the interesting thing was that you had Blake Griffin jump over Kia during the slam dunk contest. And you talk about a natural tie-in, and all of a sudden Blake Griffin is now the face of a campaign a few years later, and it's it's the most natural thing that we do after that contest. That, okay, well now let's just take Blake and Kia, and we just basically set them up, and it was just sort of a natural tie-in there. And here we are a few years later, and Blake, I think, is sort of transcending the sport now in a sense because of the character that he's become, not only on the court, but in a lot of his commercials as well.
But I'll tell you a very funny story, which was a very dark day in my life, but now I can laugh. So we had KFC was a sponsor of one of the episodes of Walking Dead, and they had what we call a billboard. Basically, it's like you were watching Walking Dead brought to you by KFC, redefining fresh, I think was sort of like a little catchphrase that they had. And what we did not know is that coming out of this gruesome, horrible, someone's pushed out of a cabin and all the zombies are there, and they literally rip the flesh off of this man. He's screaming, and they zoom into this bright red blood, and they're eating flesh, and you see it in their teeth, and it just goes, brought to you by KFC, redefining fresh.
Brought to you by KFC.
And to be honest, when all was said and done, 2/3 of the responses were celebrating. They thought we did it on purpose. They thought that KFC has a great sense of humor, and wow, look at what AMC did. This is awesome. This is great. I'm going to go to KFC and get some chicken. I'm like blown away by that. So
the work that we do, data plays a major role in helping us stay on the pulse of culture. So there's a lot of things that are going on out there, and it's a question of, is this really a trend or is this a fad? And so we do a lot of research just to bring home the point of this is actually not a fad. This is something that is ingrained in a particular demographic for the long haul, at least for the foreseeable future. So I think data is a way for us to stay aware and keep people abreast of how things are moving. I think also as we go in, a lot of the work that we're doing within the auto industry, it's important for us to conduct data globally and talk to young people so that we can understand what does a car mean to a 16-year-old today versus what a car meant to a 16-year-old 20 years ago. And it's very different. And so it's one thing just to say, look, we can look at the sales numbers and see that young people aren't buying cars like they used to, but it's another thing to understand why that's happening.
We did metrics about commercials that ran during the show, and brand awareness, brand lift, intent to purchase were metrics that we measured that were off the charts, and it really, really was a positive experience for them. Sometimes we're biased, and we look for data that will reinforce what we believe. But the best learnings are when you're open yourself up to data and you actually realize that what you thought intuitively was going to be true really isn't. And you have to make sure you don't have those blind spots. Yes, they paid us money to blow up their vehicle, but I think it kind of plays, it's beautifully, it's not forced. You don't feel like this is a branded moment. You don't feel icky. It really is part of the story, and that truly is when branded entertainment works best.
For us, the competition, I wouldn't say is necessarily the other sports leagues, but for us, it's really, watching on TV, which is great. But, so it's sort of it's an interesting dynamic as to one of our, our big threats, because one of our threats is actually could be a positive as well if they watch on TV. But for someone to say, I'm going to take little Johnny to a game and spend, what could be $400 to $600 and pay for parking when I could literally be sitting in my house, that's an interesting thing. And obviously,
there's a desire for you to interview us as much as we interview you, and sometimes the fit is just obvious and sometimes it's not. So that's one thing. Two, we're also looking for someone who has the capability to do more than one thing. A lot of our work, again, we're a small shop, so a lot of our work comes in a lot of different ways, and comes from a lot of different directions. Working on something like the Pepsi halftime show is very different than working on something like GM or General Motors recruitment efforts on a campus like Ivy League schools or campuses like Stanford University. Very different. So there needs to be an ability to be able to look at things in a number of different ways, and kind of wear a number of different hats. And then I would say third, there needs to just be a general passion for culture. That's what we're about. That's what we do. That's what we're known for.